Hello and welcome. I am Ruben Banerjee, the editor of Outlook magazine, and we are coming to you from the Delhi headquarters of Outlook. This issue has been quite a busy period for us because we are approaching 26/11, and as you would recollect, 26/11 10 years ago etched a lasting scar on the nation's psyche. Some terrorists came across the borders and then they attacked our financial capital, Mumbai, and Mumbai was kind of under siege for several days. At the end of it, 166 people died, mostly civilians and security personnel. And this is not to say the terrorists who finally were taken out by our security services. So as a magazine, our job is to keep you updated, keep you informed. And while we look back at 26/11, we decided that we should take a hard look at the state of security in this country and whether we as Indians are any safer 10 years on. So this is what our latest Outlook issue looks like. 26/11, the iconic picture of the Taj on fire, and we are asking the question which I guess would be on everyone's lips: is India any safer? Joining me in today's conversation is Pranay Sharma, who is our foreign affairs editor and also the bureau chief, and Ushi Noor, one of our most senior reporters who actually worked very hard to put together this cover. Ushi Noor, the first question to you: what is the biggest takeaway from 26/11 10 years ago? Are we any safer?
I would say considerably so on certain counts, but on certain counts we are definitely still lagging behind. Also the terror threat, as we've written, terror threat has also evolved, has changed. So, you know, on a balance on certain areas, definitely we've made giant leaps and forwards, such as the NSG. You know, we've really, they've come a long way. There are several lacks which we will be discussing, but just to give a primer, there's intelligence, there's state police forces, you know, there's also a question of political will and direction. Those are the issues that still do remain.
This is how a cover package looks like. This is the opening spread. We are asking, the headline says, to stop the next Kassabs. And we take a long and hard look at where the status of security in this country at the moment, 10 years after 26/11. Pranay, what do you think have been the key takeaways in the last 10 years?
One, what he's talking about, the security, you know, various aspects of it. One is the preparedness. The other one, which is a very, very vital element always in this, that is intelligence. How good has that been, the network? How updated we are? How connected we are with other countries? Because it is not only limited within India, because as we saw from the Mumbai attacks, the sources were from the West. The recce was done by American, and finally the guys who came, they came from Pakistan. That's all. So Pakistan is a separate one which we can discuss a little later, but on the security aspect is the intelligence which needs to really go up, and we have comments on that from the former RAW chief and others, you know, also which has been weaved into the main story. I think that is the key. The other things come later. You know.
Exactly.
So what did you gather, Ushi Noor? Like our intelligence is better?
I wouldn't really say so. Like, you know, it is still struggling on many aspects. Of course, there's opacity. There is also a lack of accountability except to the government. I think one of a big problem is that, you know, there's no accountability to parliament, which is of course, you know, a larger kind of accountability which many other countries have, which really keeps a knock on the intelligence. But frankly, you know, even if you see the comments from the former RAW operatives or the former RAW chief, you will see that they are saying that if there is another Headley, we cannot stop him. And that is, you know, where the biggest problem is. Can we stop another Headley? That's the question that, you
So
know,
what do we need to do that we haven't done as yet?
Well, I would be giving away many of the things that we've written, and it's a deeper analysis. We can't really crunch it down in that. But definitely the structure of India's intelligence, internal as well as external, definitely needs to change, which even people who are currently serving with the Home Ministry and who have worked on intelligence in the last, say, 10 years or so, they've also made those comments. For example, the Intelligence Bureau just does not want to change its structure, or just does not want to give up control. Though there's supposed to be a national grid. Every state works in silos. Now that's internal. Perhaps Pranada will give you a better picture of what the external structure is like.
Yeah, the other one which I think we should touch upon, that is the revival or the importance of the beat corps, which was always there the first term, who will tell you what is happening in the locality, in the mohalla, and then that will be analyzed, that will go up to various levels. So I think that the beat corps, the revival, the stress on that is extremely important in all this.
And the last time these terrorists came from Pakistan, Kasab and the gang, they came by sea.
Yes.
So coastal security, tell me, has it improved?
Coastal security has actually, on paper, it's made major improvement. In practice, of course, we've only been able to analyze a few of the things, because we've not actually taken a boat and tried to come into India. Of course, that might be suicidal right now. But from what I understand by talking to several people, including former admirals, etc., it has been tightened. There are many things have been revamped, especially the coordination and the synergy between 3 different agencies, which is your maritime police, the last line of defense. Beyond that is the coastal coast guard, and then it's the Indian Navy, which has a really important role. They're all trying to work together, but what they have failed to do is, it's running on an executive order from the cabinet for a last decade or something. There has to be a proper act of parliament. These things should be owned by parliament.
So what we did was, while we were doing this audit of the state of security in this country, we decided to also do a kind of we portrayed a hypothetical scenario. Say suppose there is an attack. Say there is the cyber hub in Gurgaon in Haryana, not far away from where we are sitting right now. So we decided to have a look at what would happen if there is in the event of such an attack. And Ushin, would you like to take us through what happens? So we are saying that, say suppose some armed attack has come in around 9 o'clock in the evening, and this cyber hub is a place which is very popular with office goers and diners, and apparently that place gets about 1 lakh footfalls every day,
including the business, because there are so many offices.
And so what would the response be like? Like we know that when the attack unfolded in Bombay 10 years ago, there was a lag, right? Now, how possibly would it be different now?
See, the plans also have evolved, as has the terror threat, but the plans also have evolved. So all the state police forces are supposed to have a quick response team, which will be on the ground within
So
minutes.
Every state has a quick response team?
Most of them are supposed to have it, some have failed. Then there is the special commando force, of course. We've carried also not just, there is an NSG audit of the commando forces and also a CAG audit of the commando forces and their preparedness. We've covered these. But let's say Haryana, for example, just last month they have only announced that they're going to have a commando force. So then, of course, we have to realize that this area is covered not only by a very good private security system, but also by the NSG. Like the NSG is very at hand. But that should not be the attitude. I mean, NSG is going to come on its own when there is a deployment request has been done. First level is the police. So once there is an attack, video analytics, there are video analytics which can pick up that anomaly on a CCTV camera, and private security will be alerted. Private security does a lockdown. In the meantime, the attackers are of course coming in. Now, there are some beat constables over there who can also inform their own police senior officers, and these things start to unravel. They will come on the spot, they will do a quick assessment, tell them what exactly is going on, whether it's just hoodlums, whether it's just some guy gone mad, or whatever, it can be many things. So they have to give an assessment and do that. Immediately within that, let's say within the next 10 minutes, a quick response team should come and at least start, creating a perimeter so that these people can't go in. But 10 minutes, 12 minutes is a long time for a terrorist. There are hundreds of dinos over there. Bodies will fall. People will be killed. There will be grenades which will be killed.
Bhushan, there's also a mention of what people could do, as Dr.
We have it all here.
Yes.
If you are under attack, what is the drill that you should ideally follow, right? No, but the audit, what I gather from this is, like there are gaps still, but hopefully the response will be much quicker, faster this time. And suppose
more high tech.
More high tech, and say suppose the attack starts at around 9 o'clock, hopefully by 9:15 or 9:20, the NSG should be there,
Yes.
right?
That's in the case of Gurgaon. But
that's in the case of Gurgaon.
Other towns may not be that lucky. Of course, the NSG, what they have done is they have started 4 more hubs since. So all the 4 major metros plus Ahmedabad is now covered by hubs.
See, what I like, what from Ushino's report that I found it very fascinating was, I am told that 10 years ago when this Mumbai attack happened, NSG was stationed in Manesar. So they took about 2 hours to drive from Manesar to reach the Delhi airport to be flown to Bombay. Now that will not happen anymore because NSG is stationed right now at the airport.
They've got 1 alert squadron ready at Palam airport.
And they can commander any airplane which is...
They have the RAW's ARC fleet, they have there's IAF helicopters and fleet available, plus they can commandeer any private, commercial...
So the response will be quicker?
Yes, it will be much quicker.
And what do you think, Pakistan has learnt any lessons? Like, will they try and get into similar adventures in the future?
That's a $1 million question, I mean, frankly, because I don't think I have a very clear answer to it. But I think, the engagement needs to be there. Pakistan, there are various ways. One is diplomatically, of course, you have to engage and try and see that these kind of things don't happen. But some also suggest that make the cost so much higher for Pakistan that they don't really try and get into any kind of such adventurism in future. Perhaps there could be a deterrence, not only in terms of arms, but there should be incentive enough for them not to pursue this policy and to look at something which can be more constructive.
We have very interesting pieces, columns on this subject from Aisha Siddiqui, a Pakistani scholar, academic, right? And then we also have the former RAW chief, PHK Tharakan, writing on the subject. So these are very interesting insights into a state of security in the country. And so pick up your copy, pick up your issue. I think this will be very, very informative and very useful. And because 26/11 has left such a deep scar on all of us, and none of us in the right frame of mind want such a thing to happen again in this country or anywhere else. And apart from this, like, of course, this is 26/11, 10 years on, whether lessons have been learned, how safe India is the biggest question that we are trying to answer in this issue. But even otherwise, like always, we have a fantastic bouquet of stories, and I will quickly take you through. We have a photo story on cosplay. Like, when I was growing up, I only knew of bahurupiyas, people who would put up disguises and go around. Now things have changed, so cosplay is basically people who dress up as characters or fictional characters. They dress up as fictional characters and they add color to events. So that's a fantastic one. And another story that we have, which possibly is not as big a question as not a question of life and death, but the future of our Indian wicketkeeper, MS Dhoni. Is he going to play in the next World Cup? Right?
That's a big question.
That's a big question. And so we have a fantastic story on this. MS Dhoni and the others who are in the reckoning to replace him. Riddhiman Saha, Ishan, Kishan, Dinesh Karthik and all that. And we have quite a few, front of the book, we have very interesting stories on, it's election season. 5 states are going to the polls this month and the next month. And we have looked at what's happening in Madhya Pradesh, and a fascinating story from the election, the poll-bound state of Mizoram. It's a fantastic story. This is a facet of the state, northeastern state, which honestly I was not aware of. Like, would you like to take the readers through to the salient points?
I don't know exactly what all he has written, but Mizoram, knowing it, what Mizoram has gone through, like many other northeastern states, it had a long phase of insurgency. Then it came back to the mainstream, and they want to maintain, like that. As in many other parts of Northeast, this is strategically a very important area also. So Mizoram and their development, which becomes always an issue in the Northeast, and the interaction, engagement with mainland.
The story, what sets it apart from the normal election coverage, because this story talks about like Mizoram elections, like any other state, it's as colorful, but it's not as divisive, because the church plays a
very important role.
plays a very huge important role, and it ensures that the elections are free, fair, and within decorum. Like there is a degree of what would I say, degree of fairness
Maintained there.
which is maintained, a civility is maintained. So that possibly sets elections in Mizoram, it's a class apart, it sets it apart. And of course we have a story on the name change, the politics of name change. We all know that Ayodhya very recently became Prayagraj. So there is an interesting story. So overall I think we have a power-packed issue, great stories. So please do pick up this issue, and we'll always, as always, look forward to your feedback. See you next week. Thank you.